Hey everyone, it's BlueLizardJello and welcome back to Everything Possible in Dark Souls 1. And here we are on top of Sen's Fortress about to examine this light. But before we do that, let's go ahead and take a look at our character because as you can see, he looks vastly different than he has in the past. This is the same character. But we're going to go for a light dexterity bleed build this time around. So as you can see, Uchi Katana, the bandit's knife, I have my shadow set with the gauntlets of the Vanquisher because I thought that looked pretty interesting. We have some pretty standard rings. We do have a couple of different arrow types equipped. We're going to be using both of those, and I'm using the throwing knives in order to pull my targets closer to me. But without further ado, here we are in Anor Londo. Easily one of the most breathtakingly beautiful set pieces in all of Dark Souls. And as we descend these stairs, we can see many of the areas that we're actually going to be exploring, but before we do that, we have a couple of rooms to clear. And they have this new type of enemy known as Sentinels. We'll be fighting both these normal Sentinels and Royal Sentinels later on when we advance further in Anor Londo. But they have a few different attacks, and the Shield Bash is one of the easiest in order to counterattack, because as long as you can circle around behind, they have a long recovery time. And we will get one of their drops, but they can drop one of two things, or at least these normals can. They can drop the Giant's Halberd, and they can drop the Giant's Shield. As far as the Giant's Armor, we will be able to purchase that from the Giant Blacksmith later on in Anor Londo. Use at your own discretion. One of the nice things about these Sentinels, even though they are heavily armored, because the Uchi Katana has bleed, I am actually able to take them out in relatively few hits, even though each one is only doing about 91 damage. Because as you'll see, the bleed damage will actually take off a good chunk of their health bar if I can get their bleed status to actually proc. It helps when I'm not getting slammed to the ground with their shield, but I can still make do. One more to go, guarding a chest. And you can see that this character, while I do have the shield equipped right now, that is for parrying only, and we will be switching that out as soon as we can, if we can actually get our hands on a painting Guardian Sword. Spoiler alert, we can and we do. Get ourselves a Demon Titanite in this chest that is next to the statue of Ornstein, and you can see that we have a drop here, and we get the Giant's Halberd. I don't get the Giant Shield from any of these Sentinels, however that's alright because you can purchase that and the Halberd from the Giant Blacksmith. We just passed a crossroads. We could have gone left to go down to a bonfire, we could have gone right to advance a level. We decided to come straight so we could continue to clear out these enemies and get the drop before we actually rest at the bonfire. Here I am using the throwing knife to pull just one at a time. You can pull the one on the left or the right if you stick to the corresponding wall. However, I find that using a ranged strategy tends to make it just a little bit more reliable. It is nice being able to roll between their legs. And you can see Ornstein's counterpart Smo up there on the pedestal, but we'll get a better look at him in a moment. First, we get the wonderful Shield Bash, which we can actually stagger the Sentinel with just 3 swings and 1 more to bleed, and the Sentinel is down. And there's Smo and his mighty hammer. We'll be meeting them again shortly. Just comparing these chests yet again because Anor Londo does have several mimics, but in this normal chest we get a Twinkling Titanite, and then over here, with the chain sticking straight out, and then if you watch closely, the breathing action, so clearly a mimic. So we'll go ahead and take him out as fast as we can. Now this is something that I didn't realize was possible from the mimics. They have this jumping leap attack that can basically cross an entire room. I don't believe I've ever seen that before. I knew that they could kick and that it really hurt, but I've never seen them jump that far. And here we have the Crystal Halberd. So this is our first guaranteed crystal weapon drop. You can actually upgrade weapons along the crystal path. They do a lot of damage. However, the problem is that you can't actually repair crystal weapons. There is somewhat a way around that, in that anytime you upgrade a crystal weapon, the durability goes back to full. but keep in mind that durability is already set very low, and once it breaks, that weapon is useless. And that will do it for these normal sentinels on this side of Anor Londo. So now we'll backtrack just a bit, and we'll take this path that is now on our right, go down some stairs, and we will rest at a bonfire, and we're actually going to meet our next Firekeeper. Now this Firekeeper goes by a few names. The name that I tend to go by is Lady of the Darkling. Lady of the Darkling is not only a Firekeeper, but she is also a Blade of the Dark Moon Covenant member. And if you actually trespass the Dark Moon Tomb, if you kill Gwyndolin, which we will, or if you kill the image of Guinevere, then this Firekeeper becomes hostile, and you can no longer use the bonfire. So before we do any of those, which we will be doing all three, it's a good idea that if you have any Firekeeper souls to turn them in so you can boost your Estus Flask. In this case, we are now at +2. With all that said and done, we're going to go ahead and get a really good look at Anor Londo from up here, including, once we look down, the next enemy that we'll be facing, who looks a little familiar. We actually have another pair of gargoyles. There's one on this side of the rotating platform, and there's one on the other. The difference being the bell tower gargoyles actually breathe fire, whereas these ones will breathe lightning. But as far as drops, you can actually get the same item drops, and you'll see between these two, we actually get all of them. And in case you missed it the first time around, this gargoyle does offer a tail cut, and you can actually get yet another gargoyle tail axe, which is also a really great way to stun him. Attack patterns are essentially the same, so just keep on your feet and you should be fine, unless you roll into one of their slams. But even then, you can get up and try again. And from this one, we'll get the halberd and the shield off the gargoyle. Hop down here and circle around the tower, because we have another wooden chest. Fortunately, not a mimic this time. And we can get ourselves a Demon Titanite. You will find several sources of Demon Titanite in Anor Londo, and the gameplay mechanic behind it is that the giant blacksmith is also located here, and he is the one who can actually create boss weapons for you. And we're going to take a look at a few of those, the ones that we can actually create, later on in the next episode. By the way, I did have to cut Anor Londo into 2 episodes, just due to the sheer size and the number of areas to explore. This is part 1. We will get to the bonfire that is actually in the main building of Anor Londo, and then the next section will actually cover the rest of it, including the fight with Ornstein and Smo. So here we have our first look at Painting Guardians, and you're going to see why they're called Painting Guardians once we actually get to the lower section. These enemies can drop 2 things for you. They can drop their Painting Guardian Sword, which is a curved sword that actually does more damage than both the scimitar and the falchion, and it also causes bleed, and it actually has a parry animation when it's held in the offhand. So if we can get one to drop, or when we get one to drop, that is actually what we're going to switch our shield out for. They can also drop, more commonly, throwing knives in either sets of 2 or 5. You can see this chandelier clearly has a shiny on it. So what are you going to do when a chandelier has something you want on it? You just break the chain. It's that simple. You want to carefully traverse these beams, and if they're going to actually start throwing daggers at you, it's good to just take a few steps forward, which will cause most of them to miss you completely. In this case, I was very fortunate to have him just decide that life wasn't worth living anymore. Their jumping attack is one of their easiest, if not their easiest attack to parry. Any other attack can come a lot swifter, and the timing can be a lot more difficult. Dropping down onto the pedestal of the statues does save some of your HP, so if you can do so, I suggest you do. And be wary of the ambush just at the top of the stairs. here is our Painting Guardian sword. So very excited that this dropped. It is not a terribly common drop. At base item discovery, you have about a 2% chance for that to drop. The Divine Blessing out of this chest has a 100% chance to drop. Fun fact. But here we are already changing that shield out for the Painting Guardian sword. There's the parry animation. We're going to have some fun with that. Running to the other side. And if you're observant and you notice the ambush on the other side, then you may actually know what's at the top of these stairs. Surprise, surprise. But that's okay, because we're already starting to learn our parry with the Painting Guardian sword. He is down and he drops a pair of throwing knives for us. That ladder is what we would have used to climb down had we not dropped onto the statues. But coming out of this fog wall, going to run onto this rotunda. You can see the next gargoyle lying in wait. And we have this lever mechanism in the center that is going to rotate the platform as well as either lower or raise it depending on what side you're pushing from. I left this cutscene in just so you can actually see the mechanism in action, so you can actually see where the platforms will be pointing once you're done rotating. You can see that this gargoyle is very aggressive, and actually if you want to fight him on the stairs, you can lure him down there, and then you can actually get plunging attacks off of these top portions, which will actually aid you because they do a lot more damage because they are considered a critical hit. And here begins the trolling. It's like we're playing just a big game of leapfrog. That's okay, because eventually I am going to grow wise, and I'm going to start rolling at him instead of away. And then he's going to grow wise and realize that, hey, my tail is a giant axe. Maybe I should start using that. Now this gargoyle, for some reason or another, you cannot get a gargoyle tail axe from. You can get the tail cut, but you won't get any item for doing so. It is still a good idea to do so if you get the opportunity, because you do cause him to stagger for quite a bit. And there's the gargoyle helm, so now we have all the gargoyle items just from these gargoyles. And we're actually going to rotate the platform down again because there's two areas that we can access by doing so, one of which actually has an optional boss. Running all the way down here, this is actually where the Dark Moon Seance Ring is going to come into play, because as you can see, we're entering into a room that has a statue of Lord Gwyn, a bonfire, and an item, and if we didn't have the Dark Moon Seance Ring, we wouldn't be able to progress any further from here in our current state. And the reason is, unless we actually go and kill the image of Guinevere, that statue will remain there. But first, let's pick up the Ring of the Sun's Firstborn, and if you're into offensive miracles, this ring could be beneficial to you, because this will increase the damage by approximately 25% for each spell. It does not increase the damage of any weapon buffs, however. So now we'll just go ahead and equip the Dark Moon Seance Ring, watch the statue of Lord Gwyn disappear, and now we can run down here, and we're faced with two options. We can kneel, and we can actually offer ourselves to Gwyndolin, and we can join the Blade of the Dark Moon Covenant, which we will do at first, just so we can actually enter the Covenant and get the items. So now we're given the option to kneel.
Disciple of the Dark Sun,
we will join the Covenant, and by saying yes, we abandon our former Covenant, and we will get the Blue Eye Orb and the Dark Moon Blade Covenant Ring. Now these have two different functions. With the Blue Eye Orb, we can use it to invade the world of sinners. With the Dark Moon Blade Covenant Ring equipped, we can actually invade the world of players who have killed the image of Guinevere and turned Anor Londo dark. But because we're actually just trying to show everything possible in this series, we really don't care about the Covenants. We're going to go ahead and trespass against Gwyndolin. We're going to enter the Fog Gate, and we're actually going to fight this optional boss. Dark Sun Gwyndolin has cast a spell on this hallway, which will actually cause it to run on forever until we actually take him out. Yes, take him out. This is actually one of Gwyn's sons, not his daughters. Just so you're aware. Now he has 3 different attacks. He has these crossbow darts that he'll shoot at us, he has these multiple sorcery projectiles, and he also has that very large one, which will go through these pillars. Standing behind the pillars can avoid the crossbow bolts, and they can avoid the other projectiles, but that large projectile, you will have to either roll through or run to the side. I find that getting him to raise up in the air and shoot a crossbow bolt is one of the easiest times to actually get some hits off. And as you saw just a moment ago, once you actually get too close, he will actually start teleporting, so be as fast as you can, and having a light build makes his fight a lot easier than something slow. You saw at the beginning of the fight I did use Power Within. I was fairly confident that I wouldn't take too many hits from this boss, so having the slowly draining health is actually not too much of an issue for me. Here come the multiple projectiles, and there's the rolling underneath that other larger projectile. Or you can actually just run to the side. It's easier to run to the side if you're still a good distance away. When you're close, it actually comes faster than you might realize, and you might not have time to dodge.
Swathed in dark.
But there is Dark Sun Gwyndolin down. And with him down, the hallway will go back to normal. And for a drop, we will go ahead and get the Soul of Gwyndolin. Soul of Gwyndolin, when consumed, gives you 16,000 souls. If you feed it to Frampt, you get 20,000. Or you can use it with the Giant Blacksmith with a plus 10 bow to get the Dark Moon bow. Or with a catalyst, almost any catalyst, to turn it into the Tin Dark Moon catalyst. Also, if you go back to Firelink Shrine and visit Domhnall of Xena, you can pick up the Moonlight set, which is the armor set that Gwyndolin wears, including the Crown of the Dark Sun. Crown of the Dark Sun is an excellent helm for you casters out there because it increases all spell damage by 10%. We have 3 chests here. The first one is empty, but the second one has the brass set. The brass set is actually the set that is worn by the Firekeeper here, the Lady of the Darkling. So you don't actually have to kill that Firekeeper to get the armor. And then in the center, we have the Miracle Sunlight Blade. Sunlight Blade is a 60-second weapon buff, and this buff will add lightning damage to your weapon, and the actual damage that it applies is based on your Talisman's Magic Adjust. Take your Talisman's Magic Adjust, multiply it by 1.8, and that would be the lightning damage that this buff would add. So now that we've taken out Gwyndolin, we're going to go ahead and head back up the stairs, and we're actually going to go back into the Cathedral where we already traversed the beams, and we're going to be on the lower section where there are numerous other painting guardians to contend with. These stairs are very long. I'm going to switch back to my Painting Guardian sword. Now, keep in mind, this does not all go as planned, because some of their attacks are very swift, and I still don't understand the parrying timing quite right, but as I said, the jumping attack gives you plenty of time to get the parry off. No big deal. Another pair of throwing knives here. And now we do have a few here in front of this chandelier, and at this point, we're just going to get all their attentions and hope for the best. And the best being the jumping attack, which leaves them wide open. And another 5 throwing knives from that Painting Guardian. Now there are a few ambushes here, so make sure that you're actually checking on the outside of some of these pillars, because if you decide to get rushed by 2 or 3 of them from the center, you may also be surprised by one from the outside. Now that was a very interesting backstab. I'm not going to complain that that was anything cheap. What happened was these Painting Guardians, they will not fish for backstabs. In other words, they're not going to run around, they're not necessarily going to try to roll around you. However, as soon as you present your back, if you are within stabbing distance, they will attack. And in that case, I was actually trying to roll away, and because I had actually hit the back button before I hit the roll button, there was a split-second opportunity for the Painting Guardian to get a backstab, and he did take it. You'll actually see that again from another one of them. That was an interesting parry and a hit. But I'm determined. I'm gonna get that parry. Even if I have to parry when he's not even nearby. They're very agile, and I do respect the AI of this enemy. It's actually one of the most intelligent I feel in the games, because as you saw, I tried to do jumping R2, and he actually backstepped right out of it. And typically, once you've done some damage, if you actually give them the opportunity, they will switch to his shield, and they will be able to block and parry you. And that fight took far too long, but he is down. We just have a few more to deal with. If they would ever just stop throwing knives. There's the jumping attack and the parry. Easy enough. And there's the backstab again. As I decided to turn around and roll away, they instantly got the backstab off. Again, I don't necessarily consider it unfair because technically my character does turn and offer his back in sacrifice before I actually get the roll off. There's another instance where I actually got the parry and I got hit at the same time, and we both kind of reflected off of each other. Decided to back off, give myself some breathing room. Had he gotten the backstab there, and I was afraid he would, that would have been the end for me. Go ahead and reset the encounter. Finally decide to actually land a parry. Let's see if we can do the same for this one. And we can. There's only one more painting guardian between us and all of the sweet, sweet loot down here. But one of the items we can actually get without encountering him, and that is the sorcery great magic weapon that we knocked off of the chandelier. So great magic weapon is another weapon buff. This buff will actually add magic damage to your weapon at a rate of 1.1 times your catalyst magic adjust. The stronger your catalyst is with its magic adjust, the stronger this buff will be. You saw that lovely painting of the painted world of Ariamis. We will be doing that in the episode after the second half of Anor Londo. And we can access that because we have the peculiar doll that we got when we returned to the Undead Asylum. More throwing knives of that painting guardian, but much more important, we have the Black Iron set, the Great Sword, and the Black Iron Great Shield. If this looks at all familiar to you, that is because this is the equipment of Black Iron Tarkus, the god amongst men who helped us out in Sen's Fortress, who single-handedly took on the Iron Golem. Interesting tidbit, FromSoft actually held a shield design contest before Dark Souls 1 was released, and the Black Iron Great Shield is one of the 4 winners. So that shield was designed by a player, and I think that's very cool. Dark Souls 2 also had a similar contest. But with those sections done, we will go ahead and send the Rotunda back up 1 level, because that first half of Anor Londo is now complete, and now we actually go into the much more elaborate half with much more dangerous enemies. At the top of these stairs, there's a large set of doors that we won't be able to open until we actually get inside an alternate route, but we do have a pair of sentinels. And fighting these at the same time can be very problematic, so if you hug the right hand side and just walk your way down the stairs, you can get this one's attention without the other one being alerted. As you can see, I can easily bleed him there, and this goes off without a hitch. So we'll take care of this other one. By the way, the shiny that we just saw above his head, we won't be getting that in this episode, but I will be pointing it out and calling it out once we pick it up in the next. Kill this jackrabbit of a sentinel. No drops for us, but now we're going to be introduced to yet another enemy type. This is the Bat-Winged Demon. However, the very first one you encounter, as long as you do any sort of damage to it before it actually is alerted, most likely the fight is not going to last very long. And here's why. Any damage done at range will typically cause him to back up just enough so that he falls off the ledge. Not so much with this one, and that's okay. We got his attention, so now we'll wait until he fires his lightning spear, and then we can go in for the kill. Very easily staggered, they have low to no poise, and they do have a chance of dropping their weapon, which is the Demon Spear. Demon Spear, if you don't get it from one of these Batwing demons, you can buy it later once we encounter Shiva in Lighttown as a merchant. With him down, we are about to encounter one of the most infamous areas in all of Dark Souls. If you go to any forum or any message board or ask any player what was the most frustrating encounter that you had when you first started playing Dark Souls, most of them, I guarantee, are going to tell you the Silver Knight archers in Anor Londo. If you decide to just climb up these ramps, you are going to be faced with a pair of great bow wielding Silver Knight archers firing these arrows that will do massive knockback, and many players have died due to being pushed right off of the edge due to these arrows. So you have a couple different options. You can run up there, you can roll under the arrows or block their arrows, you can kill them or parry the knights, or you can stand back here with your poison arrows, calculate the trajectory, make sure you hit it, and you won't actually see a damage indicator. However, once you get 2 successful arrows stuck into the Silver Knights, then you will see a damage bar appear over their head, and the reason is, even if you're not doing damage, the arrows are still inflicting poison. So I'm shooting just a little bit off right here, so let's go ahead and readjust. Meanwhile, the other one is slowly dying. So there's one hit, and there's a second. So at this point, you can put your controller down, go make a cup of tea, maybe go make yourself some breakfast, come back in just a little while, and you can see that just 2 poison arrows are enough to actually whittle their health all the way down, and they will die from just those 2 arrows. You just need to be patient. Now, I'm not patient, so even though one has died, the other one is still very much alive, but I just don't have that kind of time to wait. So this is the path that you want to take if you are going to just come up and fight them, because if you wait around that tower and wait till he shoots an arrow, you have ample time to get onto this rampway, which will give you time to dodge. Now that they are both dead, we are free to get the last piece of loot in this episode, which is down here at the bottom of this ramp that the one Silver Knight was guarding. And that is a Soul of a Hero. We've seen this just one other time before, and this soul, when consumed, will give you 10,000 souls, which is excellent at this stage in the game because we are beginning to need a lot more souls in order to level up. Very carefully run along this edge. This is where the Silver Knight Archer was. But we can hop down here. We have a fog gate. Don't worry, it's not a boss. And now that we are inside the main building in Anor Londo, which can be a bit of a labyrinth in order to navigate, but it's okay. Once you learn it, it's not too bad. But inside the first door on the left, you are greeted by not only a bonfire, but also a friendly face. Knight Solaire is here to welcome us because we've been following his quest, and he won't actually talk to you until you light the bonfire. Not that we really need him to say much to us, but we want to make sure that we do exhaust his dialogue every time we meet him.
Anytime you see my brilliantly shining signature, do not hesitate to call upon me.
And because we have been following his quest line, he will be available later on in the level in order for us to fight Ornstein and Smo. Exhausting his dialogue. And there's going to be a quick cut here because for some reason I had decided to repair my equipment on camera, but anyway, I cut that out. So that is the first half of Anor Londo. So hopefully you guys learned something, and if you did, let me know. If I missed something, let me know that too, and I will catch you next time.